Coming up on Lawmakers, Georgia's first Republican lieutenant governor takes the oath of office. Speaker of the House, Glenn Richardson, is easily reelected despite ethics allegations. And controversy in the Senate over changes to procedural rules. Those stories and more are coming up next.
This is Lawmakers, your source for all the news from under the Gold Dome. Here are your anchors, Nwandi, Lawson, and David Zelski.
Good evening. Also on Lawmakers, we'll have highlights of the 2007 inaugural ceremonies.
And excerpts from Governor Sonny Perdue's inaugural address entitled State of the Future. But our lead story tonight, Georgia's first ever Republican lieutenant governor is sworn into office.
Georgia's 8 constitutional officers made their way to Phillips Arena this afternoon, where the inaugural celebration began with a bang. The ceremonies kicked off with a 19-gun salute from cannons, which were set up just outside Phillips Arena. The Honorable Billy Ray, Superior Court Judge of Gwinnett County, administered the oath of office to Georgia's new Lieutenant Governor, Casey Cagle.
To share this stage with our governor and other statewide officers and to be surrounded by family and friends is a dream come true. And it's a great honor to stand up here before you as the 11th Lieutenant Governor in the history of Georgia.
We'll have more of Lieutenant Governor Cagle's inauguration speech and the rest of the ceremonies later in our broadcast.
Well, the first order of business in the House was to swear in its members, including 24 new state representatives. Many lawmakers were accompanied by family members as they swore their oath.
That you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Georgia. If you will so swear or affirm, will you say, I do, so help me God?
I do, so help me God.
Mr. Clerk, the members of the Georgia House of Representatives have been duly sworn and are now ready to commence the business of this General Assembly.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good job.
And following the oath by House members, House Speaker Glenn Richardson was overwhelmingly reelected as Speaker. Sandra Parrish joins us with more on that. Sandra.
In Nwandi, Richardson begins his second term as Speaker of the Georgia House, but the last several days have been rocky for him. The Democratic nominee House Minority Leader DuBose Porter, the Speaker was emotional as he gavelled the House into session.
Thank you, y'all.
House will come to order.
Earlier in the day, an ethics complaint was formally filed by the Democratic Party with the State Ethics Board and the Joint Legislative Ethics Committee that Richardson had an improper relationship with a lobbyist for a utility company.
Last year during the legislative session, Glenn Richardson was co-sponsor of a bill that that was an infrastructure bill for Atlanta Gas Light to the tune of $300 million. He clearly had a conflict of interest there, and we think that as a result of that conflict of interest, he should be investigated.
They're just using you guys to put the Democratic message.
While not speaking directly to reporters, Richardson admitted in his acceptance speech that he'd made mistakes during his first 2 years as Speaker.
Have I made mistakes as Speaker? Yes, absolutely. Will I make other mistakes in the future? Positively. Have all of us made mistakes in this first term at this job? Without question.
Speaker Pro Tem Mark Burkhalter, who nominated Richardson today, downplayed rumors that he would have challenged Richardson.
It's flattering that, that some people think that I, would be in line or incapable of doing the job, and I just try to work well with all members, both sides of the aisle, and certainly there was some talk, but I got up and I think proved that I was supporting him.
Now, Minority Leader DuBose Porter, who actually sits on the Joint Ethics Committee, tells me this will be a first for that joint committee, not only for handling a complaint, but especially one that involves legislation. Reporting live from the Capitol, Sandra Parrish for Lawmakers.
Freshmen and re-elected senators took their oath of office this morning. Newly inaugurated Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle did not preside. He will take the chair tomorrow. Judge Andrew C. Fuller led the elected officials in their oath of office. He is from the Northeastern Judicial Circuit and is a resident of Hall County, which is the home of Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle. The Senate maintains its ratio of Republicans and Democrats, with Republicans outnumbering their opposition by 12. Senator Eric Johnson was reelected as Senate President Pro Tem. He presided over the Senate this morning. The Senate adjourned for the day just before noon when most of its members made their way to the inauguration ceremony for statewide officials at Phillips Arena. The first legislative day in both chambers is largely ceremonial, but there was some contention in the Senate this morning. Changes in the body's procedural rules sparked floor debate and harsh reaction from Democrats. Jesse Freeman is live at the Capitol with more. Jesse.
Well, David, Senate Resolution 3 passed by a vote of 44 to 10, and that means motions to engross must be filed after a bill's third reading. It also means local legislation could proceed like general bills, and there may be ex officio hawks in Senate committee meetings. The group act of taking the oath of office and voting for unopposed leaders almost created a spirit of camaraderie in the Senate this morning. But it wouldn't last long. Debate began over Senate Resolution 3, which created procedural changes in the body. Most of those changes returned power to the lieutenant governor's seat, power which was usurped by the Republican majority through the President Pro Tem seat.
Throughout these rules, you'll see that is a change where you will see the President Pro Tem name struck through and the President put in so that the lieutenant governor, who's the President, will have the powers back.
But the controversy started over a change to the method of appointing ex officio members. Democrats say Republicans will use the power like House leaders use the so-called hawks to stack committees.
I thought a couple of years ago when we had these rules it was bad. But I didn't know it was going to get worse.
Is it not true that there's not a single example over the last 4 years where the appointment of an ex officio changed a vote in a Senate committee?
You may be right, Senator, but in principle that doesn't change anything.
They still have a clear advantage for the majority, and that was expected by us.
Another rule change would make it easier for bills to bypass the local delegations they affect. Opponents feel that may make it easier for parts of North Fulton County to incorporate or break off into a separate county.
It's not a sound way to go to have our local legislation hijacked by a rules change in the Senate today. I voted against that rules change.
It's ironic that the majority party now seems to be wanting to create more government. Historically, we've always heard that they were in favor of less government.
Newly inaugurated Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle did not preside over the Senate this morning. He will assume that role tomorrow, wielding his new power with new rules. One other change in the Senate worth mentioning is that Governor Perdue will have a formal floor team in the Senate. That group will include Senators Ronnie Chance and Joseph Carter. Reporting live, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
Thanks, Jesse. Governor Perdue began his inaugural speech today at Phillips Arena alongside 3 of Georgia's former governors, Carl Sanders, Joe Frank Harris, and Zell Miller.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may remember that not too many years ago, a man traveled to and fro across this state telling everyone who would listen a folksy story about a turtle on a fence post. The point of the story was that when you drive down the road and see a turtle on a fence post, then you can pretty well be assured he didn't get there by himself. He had help. And so, gentlemen, to all 3 of you, on behalf of a grateful state, I want to ask our audience to stand with me as we acknowledge that you all helped the great state of Georgia and put it on a high, high fence post.
Now, Governor Perdue's speech also included goals and challenges he set for himself and the rest of Georgia 4 years ago. He said he hopes to continue to achieve those same goals and challenge the citizens of Georgia to look even further into the state's future.
I have a vision for Georgia as a state of the future. In fact, it's a vision for the possibilities that will await us in the year 2020. A 2020 vision, if you will. And if you'll indulge me, I'd like to look at this address today as a State of the Future address. In the year 2020, my twin granddaughters, Sonny and Mary Kate, will be 20 years old. And just like any grandparent or parent or aunt and uncle, I want them to enter their 20s with an excellent education. I want them to have learned in small classes and safe classrooms, under the instruction of capable teachers who have access to all the resources and tools they need. I think it goes without saying that in 2020, I want them to have graduated from high school, but that's not enough. I want all their friends where they live in Clarksville, all the 7-year-old boys and girls, to have graduated from high school too. I'd like them to continue their world-class education here in Georgia on the Hope Scholarship at top schools and universities and technical colleges that are leading the world in life science research and bioscience technology. I want them to have here in Georgia all the opportunities they could find in places like New York or London or Tokyo. I hope they travel the world and learn from other cultures and people, but I hope they return to Georgia because I want our state to offer them the best promises for a bright future. I want those twins in 2020 to have their choices of careers. I see them as aerospace engineers, cutting-edge cancer researchers, world-class nano biomedical engineers. I see them as teachers like my mother, instituting a desire for lifelong learning in thousands of young people. And I see them when landing in the world's busiest airport, coming home to their families in an international center of business and finance.
While many of the year 2020 themes focused on education, Governor Perdue also used it as a way to promote business, building a state where he says all future generations will have opportunities available.
I plan on handing over to the next governor a state even better than the one in which we live today. So I remain committed to securing Georgia's status as the best managed state in the nation. I envision her as an international leader. You may know that we've begun running the state like a business. Well, I want Georgia to be a business that, if we were traded on the New York Stock Exchange, would be recognized as a blue chip, stable, long-term growth company and rewarded with a high market value. Georgians have made great progress, and that progress has been steady and measured over the last 4 years. This is the kind of growth you may not notice right away. It's gradual, it's incremental, it's a lot like the way kids grow taller over the span of a few months. Usually, as parents and grandparents, it's their haircuts you notice, whether or not they came from a professional barber or the ones they give themselves. But I'll tell you what, you notice the change in Georgia when you renew your driver's license online in just a few minutes, or when state government helpline is answered promptly and politely, or when you receive your tax refund quickly and electronically. Georgia is growing into a position of national leadership and prominence. Our population is increasing, our economy is strengthening, and our resources are protected. We're going from good to great, working on the transparency and accessibility of our health care system, working on providing a high-quality education for every Georgian. And now I'm often asked, what is your mandate? What will be your legacy? Ladies and gentlemen, I believe my mandate is simple: to be a good steward of this state and a faithful servant to the people of Georgia. Well, folks, the days ahead are bright and rosy, and we have a wonderful forecast. We're on a path to national and international leadership. And in the end, well, I am the one who takes this oath today. When we leave this place today, I hope that you will hear what I'm saying right now and hear me clearly. Your responsibility as Georgians is just as sacred as mine. The hard work and determination of the people of Georgia will play the greatest part in the building the future of our state. I am making a solemn pledge and commitment to every Georgian to ensure that the foundation for the future is in place, that it's rock solid and secure. But we will build the state of the future together. I've seen over and over that strong families and strong communities are the backbone of our state. In 2011, there will be another person standing right here in my place, possibly someone in this room today, with his or her hand on the Bible, taking this oath of office and becoming our next governor. I want to hand off a well-run state, one whose principles will endure beyond a change of leadership, one whose children are at the top of their national class, one who is operating with a strong conservative fiscal policies, and one who is moving forward with momentum. Today, we continue our journey. We look to the future, supported by our record and sustained by our faith. Together, we will strengthen our families and communities. We will raise expectations and create opportunities for our children and grandchildren. Together, we have already started building a new Georgia. Let us continue together by this great state from where wishes come true, dreams are fulfilled, and opportunities are abundant for all. Thank you all. God bless you, and God bless our great state of Georgia. Thank you.
Today's speech gave a basis for what Governor Perdue hopes to achieve over the next 4 years, but we should expect a few more detailed initiatives for the 2007 session in his State of the State address on Wednesday. In his inaugural remarks, Casey Cagle downplayed his role as Georgia's first Republican lieutenant governor, calling himself the next lieutenant governor for all of Georgia and paying his homage to those who came before him. Here are excerpts from the lieutenant governor's address.
I want to thank my predecessor, Mark Taylor, for his service to Georgia and for being so hospitable to us during this period of transition. The men who came before me in this office were institutions in Georgia. People like Pierre Howard and Zell Miller. People of principle, people of vision. People whose dedication to a more successful Georgia drove them to take the reins of leadership. I share their dedication. I am here today for that same opportunity. I have a vision for Georgia where all children receive a world-class education, where each child has the chance to go as far as they desire. I envision a Georgia where we remove our one-size-fits-all blinders and bring local solutions to achieve statewide results. Our educational system should be a partnership, not a dictatorship, an environment in which the state sets the standards, but let schools, parents, and administrators decide how they reach them. And our government should provide the tools to help them, not put roadblocks in their way. God has blessed me with many gifts in my life. My lovely wife, Nita, of 20 years. And my three wonderful boys, Jared, Grant, and Carter, who I'm very proud of. And you have blessed me with the gift of this opportunity of serving as your lieutenant governor. The office of lieutenant governor belongs to you, the people of Georgia. You have entrusted me to serve in this role, and I will forever be grateful. I will always know that I didn't get here alone. I know that it was the countless hours and dedicated efforts of our volunteers, the gracious contributions of our donors that allowed us to achieve this success. And from the bottom of my heart, I say thank you.
Now, Governor Sonny Perdue began his day at Northside United Methodist Church in Atlanta and then made his way to Phillips Arena for his inauguration and the swearing in of the state's 8 constitutional officers. Although the inaugural ceremony was conducted in the traditional manner, Governor Perdue added to the administration of his oath of office.
Governor, are you ready to take the oath of office?
Your Honor, not only am I ready to swear this oath, but I stand in humble expectation of fulfilling this oath. That is why I will take the oath today on an open Bible, the holy and inspired scriptures given to us by God Jehovah himself. The Bible will be open to Joshua 24, where the leader of the young Israelite nation, Joshua, exhorted his people, as I exhort our people today. And I quote from verse 15, "If it seems evil for you to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord."
Yes, sir.
Then he swore in the other elected officers.
I will faithfully execute the office of Lieutenant Governor of the state of Georgia.
Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle and Secretary of State Karen Handel became the first Georgia Republicans to take their respective offices. Attorney General Thurgood Baker returns to the office he served since he was appointed by then-Governor Zell Miller in 1997. The Dean of Georgia's constitutional officers, Agriculture Commissioner Tommy Irvin, has served since 1969. Insurance Commissioner John Oxendine was first elected in 1994. He's gone on to become the first Republican elected to statewide office 4 times.
Superintendent, if you'll place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name.
I, Kathy Cox.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
Michael Thurmond headed the Work First Welfare to Work program under Governor Miller before being elected Labor Commissioner in 1998. Although the swearing-in ceremony is actually a joint session of the General Assembly, much of the day's events were more ceremonial.
The chair recognizes the distinguished senator from the 1st District from Chatham County for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the joint session of the legislature be hereby dissolved.
Including the governor's review of the troops on the Capitol grounds. And the Senate spent legislative day 1 voting on officers and setting new rules. There are 6 new members of the body, and lawmakers Jesse Freeman caught up with several of them after the Senate went into recess.
Shortly after 10 a.m., 55 of 56 elected senators took the oath of office as administered by Judge Andrew C. Fuller of the Northeastern Circuit. Of course, they will be presided over by newly inaugurated Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle. Also leading the Senate will be re-elected President Pro Tem Eric Johnson of Savannah.
There have been 66 President Pro Tems. Only 2 others have served more than 4 years, Al Holloway and Hugh Gillis. And I am honored to join them in continuing a tradition of service to this body.
Robert Ewing will be the Secretary of the Senate after taking over for Frank Eldridge, who passed away during last year's session. And Lorenzo Wallace, a World War II veteran and Morehouse grad, is the new Sergeant-at-Arms after serving the Senate as a doorkeeper for 19 years. There are 56 members of the Senate. 34 are Republicans and 22 are Democrat. That's the same ratio that existed last session. But there are 6 new members of the body, and each brings a fresh set of priorities to this chamber.
I think we need more funding for education, and I'm here to advocate for that, even fight for that.
Water is very important. My district is Lake Lanier, and that's a water source for Atlanta, and I hope that we can work some things out about maybe increasing some lake levels to store more water.
I've signed on to legislation asking the federal government to assist in funding the Peach Care initiative.
Senator Nan Orrock makes the move to the Senate after serving in the House.
I believe I can offer valuable experience and insight, and I have a perspective of where we have been and where we need to go.
Senator Lee Hawkins has assumed Lieutenant Governor Cagle's seat, and he's not a stranger to the Capitol either.
I've testified before Senate and House committees when I was with the Georgia Dental Association as their legislative chairman, and later I was president of the Georgia Dental Association.
The group of 6 freshmen is split politically, but they will work together in the Senate that is now unified, and that its presiding officer is a member of its majority party. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Jesse Freeman.
If you are a regular Lawmakers viewer, you have probably noticed something and someone missing from this program. Our longtime managing editor and co-anchor Gerald Bryant is retiring and will not return to Lawmakers this year. Here are a few of his parting words.
First of all, it's not very easy to say goodbye. This month would have marked the beginning of my 40th year in broadcasting. Over 22 of those have been here at Georgia Public Television. Health concerns have forced me to make a difficult decision. That decision is to step away from a profession, from a television station, and from some people I truly love. Because of my job, I've had the honor to meet some wonderful Georgians over the last 3 decades. Some of the most notable have been the viewers. Your comments have almost always been kind and complimentary, and I thank you for that. I will certainly miss covering state government. Here at Lawmakers, it's always been my aim to provide Georgians with reporting that is comprehensive and without bias. It's also been reassuring to me as both a citizen and a journalist to find that there continue to be many sincere and decent men and women who want to serve their state and their constituents. To the Lawmakers staff and to all my co-workers at Georgia Public Broadcasting, I love you and I wish you the best. To our viewers, I've always tried to give you my best. Goodbye and God bless you.
We'll miss you too, Gerald, and everyone here wishes you the best. You know, Gerald has been just such an important part of this program for such a long time, taught me a lot, taught you a lot, our producer, director. But, you know, I'm sure he'd want us to continue covering everything as we have been.
Yeah, hope you're tuning in tonight, Gerald. And we, of course, are looking forward to bringing all of you all of the latest from under the Gold Dome, as we always do here on Lawmakers. You know, of course, Governor Perdue in his inaugural speech today called it a vision of the future, and he spoke a lot about some of the things that he wanted to do for the future, looking at 2020, the year when his twin granddaughters will actually be 20 years old, and kind of using that as a framework for looking at the future of Georgia.
It's hard to think that far ahead, but, you know, it's something he's been talking about for a long time. He's always taken that business approach, and he said 4 years ago, he said a growing Georgia, an educated Georgia, a safe Georgia, and a healthy Georgia. Those are 4 things that he is going to continue pushing, and he said that today.
That's true. Not a whole lot about what his legislative agenda is going to entail. Of course, probably saving that for his State of the State. But we're going to stay tuned, and later on this week, I'm sure we'll have more on that. Well, coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, we are going to have the highlights of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce's annual Eggs and Issues breakfast, and pro-life advocates will rally at the Capitol in favor of House Bill 1, Representative Bobby Franklin's proposed legislation that would ban abortion in Georgia. We'll have those stories and all the latest from under the Gold Dome tomorrow night at 7. Join us Wednesday, January 10th. That's when Governor Sonny Perdue will deliver his State of the State address to a joint session of the General Assembly at 12 noon. You can watch that address live on Georgia Public Broadcasting's website at gpb.org. And if you've missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, tune in tomorrow morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. Now stay tuned for Rick Steves' Europe. Tonight, Rick explores the historical and cultural heart of Scotland, the city of Edinburgh. Rick Steves' Europe is coming up next here on GPB.
And that's our broadcast for this, the first legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm David Zelski.
And I'm Nwandi Lawson. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great evening.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.